A 15-year-old girl stood alone on a sidewalk outside the Grand Meridian Hotel in downtown Atlanta at 11 o'clock at night. No adult beside her. No phone call she could safely make. No one who knew where she was. Inside that hotel, past the security detail and the 200 guests in formal wear, a man named Gregory Holt was moving through a charity gala, shaking hands, saying the right things, completely unaware that two people already inside that building had chosen tonight. Had chosen the corridor he would use after his remarks. Had chosen the exact minute he would stop existing. Hannah Cole was 15 years old. She worked a catering shift her mother did not know about. She had 31 minutes. And she was the only person in that city who knew what was coming. The question was whether anyone would believe her in time. Atlanta has a specific kind of cold that people who grew up pour their carry in their bodies long after they leave. It is the cold of thin walls and electricity bills negotiated down to the last dollar. The cold of a life where one bad month is not a setback but a catastrophe. That was the temperature of Hannah Cole's childhood. Her mother, Catherine, was 38. Administrative coordinator at a logistics firm in Buckhead. For years without a missed day. Her colleagues knew her as the woman who always had a pen when you needed one. They did not know that 6 years ago she had been sleeping in her car. Hannah knew. She had been 9 years old during the worst of it. Old enough to understand the silence that settled over her mother every time they drove past an apartment complex with their name on a waiting list. Young enough to call parking somewhere quiet for the night an adventure. The car was a 2009 Civic with a broken rear window seal. They lived in it for 11 weeks. What ended those 11 weeks was something Catherine had only explained once. Hannah was 12. Old enough to ask directly. There was a man, her mother said. His name was Gregory Holt. He did not know us. He did not have to do anything. But he looked at my file when nobody else would. He made one phone call. And everything changed. Gregory Holt was the founder of Holt Capital Group. Self-made. Controversial. He paid entry-level employees wages that embarrassed competitors. He funded workforce reentry programs for women coming out of housing instability. 6 years ago, when Catherine's application crossed his desk with no permanent address and a reference letter from a shelter coordinator, he had called the shelter himself. Asked 2 questions. Approved the hire the same afternoon. He never met Catherine. Never told her. She found out from a colleague 6 months later. That was the name Hannah had carried ever since. Gregory Holt. She never said it to anyone. It sat inside her the way certain things sit inside children who understand that some debts are too large to speak out loud. She had not connected the name on the catering event brief to the name in her memory until she was already on the bus downtown. Holt Capital Foundation. She told herself it was a coincidence. Got off the bus. Walked into the service entrance. Told herself she was there to work and nothing else. She was restocking a tray of appetizers in the East Corridor kitchen at 8:47 when she heard the voices. 2 men. Near the loading dock entrance, partially obscured by a steel shelving unit. Speaking in the low register of people who believe no one is listening. Hannah was not someone people noticed. She was small for her age, quiet by habit, with the particular stillness of a child who had learned early that invisibility was sometimes the only protection available. She did not freeze. She simply became very still. The first voice she did not recognize. The second voice she knew immediately. Russell Greer. He lived 4 floors above her family on Edgewood Avenue. 16 years with the Atlanta Police Department. Her mother said good morning to him in the elevator. She had watched him accept a commendation at a neighborhood watch meeting 8 months ago. She heard him say a time. A corridor number. The word clean used in a way that had nothing to do with cleanliness. Then she heard him say, after the remarks, before the side exit. Nobody will reach him in time. She heard Gregory Holt's name. She did not move for 43 seconds after the loading dock door swung shut. Then she set the tray down, walked to the staff bathroom, locked the door, stood over the sink with the water running so no one outside could hear anything, and thought. She thought about calling the police. Russell Greer was the police. She thought about calling her mother. Catherine would have driven immediately, walked through the front doors demanding to speak to someone, and been managed and delayed and handled. The story would have become, my daughter, 15 years old, working a cash job I knew nothing about, heard something in a kitchen. It would have ended there. She thought about calling 911. She had heard Russell Greer's voice. She stood in that bathroom for 4 minutes and 20 seconds. She watched the clock on her phone. She had 31 minutes before Gregory Holt's remarks. 31 minutes before he walked off that stage and turned into a corridor where 2 people were already waiting. She unlocked the door and moved. The vendor entrance had a single guard. Name badge said Samuel. She told him she was catering staff and had forgotten something inside. He asked for her credential badge. It was on the tray she had abandoned in the corridor. He shook his head. She told him there was a threat against Gregory Holt. He looked at her for a moment. Then he said she needed to call the police and stepped back into his booth and did not look at her again. She stood at that door for 90 seconds she did not have. Then she walked to the front of the building. The main entrance had 3 security members and a hotel concierge. Hannah watched from across the street. Then she crossed, walked to the desk, and asked in a clear voice for the name of Gregory Holt's personal security lead. The concierge, whose badge said Megan, looked at her the way adults looked at Hannah when she said something that did not match what they had already decided she was. Hannah said it again. Megan picked up the phone. Spoke quietly. Set it down. She said someone would be right down. For minutes later a man in a dark suit came through the interior doors. Younger than she expected. Compact and watchful. He looked at her. She told him she had information about a threat against Gregory Holt. That she had overheard 2 men. That one of them was a named Atlanta police officer. That the corridor and the time had already been chosen. He listened without expression. Then he said he appreciated her concern. He said the security team was thorough. He said if she had genuine information she should contact the Atlanta Police Department and step back toward the door. Hannah stood on the lobby carpet and watched him walk away. 22 minutes. She had 22 minutes and she had just been turned away by the one person who could have acted on what she knew. The lobby was warm and bright and full of the distant sound of string music from somewhere above her, and she stood in the middle of it and felt, for the first time since the bathroom, something close to fear. Not of what would happen to her. Of what would happen to him. She thought about her mother's voice the night she explained it. He did not have to do anything. But he did. She thought about 11 weeks in a 2009 Civic. She thought about a 9-year-old girl in the back seat calling it an adventure. She was not going to walk out of this lobby. She turned back to the concierge desk. Megan was already watching her. Hannah said, I need you to call him back down. Tell him I know the name of the officer involved. Tell him I know which department unit he belongs to. Tell him if he walks Gregory Holt into that corridor tonight and I was right, he will have to live with that. Megan looked at her for a long moment. Then she picked up the phone. The man in the dark suit came back through the interior doors 2 minutes later. This time he did not stop several feet away. He walked directly to her. His name was Brandon Scott. Head of security for Holt Capital Group. 7 years in the position. He looked at Hannah the way he had not looked at her the first time. Not through her. At her. He said, tell me the name. She told him everything. The voices. The corridor number. The time. The exact words. After the remarks, before the side exit. Nobody will reach him in time. And then Russell Greer's name. His face. He's 16 years. The commendation she had watched him receive 8 months ago at a neighborhood watch meeting 4 blocks from her apartment. Brandon Scott did not interrupt her once. When she finished, he asked one question. Not about her age. Not about what she was doing in the hotel. He asked whether she was certain about the voice. She said she had heard that voice in an elevator twice a week for 3 years. He looked at her for 2 seconds. Then he made a call. If you are still here, you already know this story is different. Subscribe now if you have not. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. And stay with me, because what happens next is the part that will stay with you longest. What happened in the next 19 minutes Hannah did not witness directly. She was placed in a small room off the concierge corridor with a bottle of water and a hotel staff member named Andrea who sat across from her and asked nothing and answered nothing. What she pieced together afterward was this. Brandon Scott had the third-floor corridor cleared and swept within 11 minutes. A federal contact outside the department was reached. 2 men were detained before the program segment began. One of them was Russell Greer. Gregory Holt gave his remarks at 9:32. He walked off the main stage, turned into a corridor that had 4 people in it instead of none, and understood in that moment that the shape of his evening had changed in ways he did not yet have the full picture of. Brandon Scott met him at the door. They spoke for 3 minutes. Then Gregory Holt walked down a corridor, through a door, and into the room where Hannah was sitting with an untouched bottle of water and the expression of someone who has been holding something very heavy for several hours and is not quite sure yet that it is safe to put it down. He stopped in the doorway. She looked up. He was not what she had expected from photographs. Smaller. More present. He looked at the room carefully, the way someone looked at a place they were trying to understand. His eyes moved to the water bottle. Then to her. He said her name. Not as a question. She nodded. He came in and sat across from her. Not in the way that powerful men sometimes sat across from people they considered lesser. In the way someone sat when they understood they were in the presence of something they had not accounted for. He asked if she was all right. She said yes. He asked why she had not called the police. She told him about Russell Greer. The voice. The elevator. The 16 years. The commendation. He was quiet. Then he asked the question. He asked why she had come. Hannah looked at him for a moment. Not the pause of someone searching for words. The pause of someone who has been carrying words for a long time and needs a moment to set them down carefully. She said, 6 years ago you saved my mother. You looked at her file when nobody else would. You made one phone call. You never met her. You never told her. You just did it because it was right and then you moved on with your day. She paused. Tonight I heard someone was going to take your life. And I thought about my mother sleeping in a car with a 9-year-old in the back seat. I thought about the 11 weeks before your phone call. And I thought, if there is anyone in this city who deserves to have someone walk into the dark for them, it is you. She looked at him directly. It was my turn, she said. Gregory Holt sat across from a 15-year-old girl in a hotel corridor room at 11 o'clock at night and said nothing for a long time. Not because he had nothing to say. Because some things arrive with a weight that language is not immediately equipped to carry. He asked how old she had been. When her mother lost the housing. 9, she said. He looked at the table between them. Then back at her. He said he had reviewed dozens of files over the years. Had made calls he had forgotten by the following week. Had never known what any of them became. Now he knew what one of them became. He said he wanted to call her mother. Hannah said that was fair. Catherine Cole arrived at the Grand Meridian Hotel at 11:41. No details on the phone. Only the hotel name, a room number, and the assurance that Hannah was safe. She walked through the lobby in the clothes she had been wearing when the call came. Work trousers. A cardigan. Shoes she had not changed. The entrance of a woman running on 40 minutes of terror that had not yet finished converting to relief. She came through the door and saw Hannah. She crossed the room in 4 steps and put both arms around her daughter and said nothing. Just held her. The grip of someone who had spent 40 minutes imagining the version of this moment that did not have Hannah in it. Hannah let her. After a moment, Catherine straightened and looked across the room. She went still. Not the stillness of recognition. The stillness of a person whose body understands something before the mind has finished processing it. Gregory Holt stood. Catherine looked at him the way you looked at someone you had rehearsed thanking 1,000 times in the quiet of your own mind and had never expected to be standing in front of. She said his name. He said hers. The room was very quiet. Then Catherine said something she had not planned. Something that arrived the way true things arrive, without rehearsal, without warning, from a place that had been waiting longer than she knew. She said, "I have spent 6 years trying to find the right words to thank you. 6 years. I practiced what I would say if I ever had the chance. I thought about it more times than I can count." She looked at her daughter. Her voice was steady and then it was not. "She beat me to it," she said. Something moved across Gregory Holt's face. A rearrangement. The expression of a man absorbing all at once the full distance a single phone call had traveled. 6 years. 11 weeks. A 2009 Civic. A 9-year-old in the back seat. A name carried in silence across all of it. A girl who walked alone at 11 o'clock at night into a hotel where 2 people wanted a man dead and found the one door that was still open. He looked at Catherine. Then at Hannah. Then back at Catherine. He said quietly, "I think she did." There are moments in a room that do not require anything further. This was one of them. 3 people and 6 years and 1 phone call and everything it had become, pressing into the silence between them. Nothing needed to be said. Everything already had been. They left together through the lobby. Through the revolving doors. Into the October night that was colder now than when Hannah had walked in. Catherine did not ask about the catering job until they were in the car. Hannah said she knew. Catherine said they would talk about it at home. They drove in silence for 6 blocks. Then Catherine reached over and put her hand over her daughter's without taking her eyes off the road. The investigation moved quickly. Russell Greer and the second man, Justin Ferris, a former contractor with connections to 2 of Holt Capital Group's most significant business rivals, were taken into federal custody. The charges were serious. The evidence was not thin. Russell Greer had made the specific error of underestimating how carefully a 15-year-old girl in a hotel kitchen could hold still. The Atlanta Police Department released a statement 6 days later. It said in formal language what formal language always found difficult to say plainly. One of their own had been involved in something with no justification and no defense. The department was cooperating fully. Hannah read it on the school bus and put her phone away and looked out the window for the rest of the ride. 2 weeks later, Gregory Holt's office asked whether a meeting would be appropriate. They met on a Saturday morning on the 14th floor of the Holt Capitol building. He came with Brandon Scott and a woman named Frances who ran the foundation's community programs. He asked Hannah directly what she thought was needed. Not in her neighborhood specifically. In any neighborhood like hers. She told him. She said the problem was not that people in communities like hers did not know things. The problem was that the institutions built to protect them had given them enough reasons not to trust the people inside those institutions. And the gap between what people knew and what they were willing to report, and to whom, was where a great deal of harm lived quietly and for a very long time. She said she had walked alone at 11 o'clock at night because there was no one she trusted enough to call who would also have been believed. That, she said, was the problem worth solving. Frances wrote something down. Gregory looked at her for a long moment. Then he said he wanted to come back with a plan. Not a gesture? A real plan. Hannah said she could wait. But not indefinitely. He almost smiled. On the drive home, Catherine kept both hands on the wheel and said nothing for a long time. She was thinking about 11 weeks. A broken rear window seal. October cold coming in on the driver's side. A 9-year-old who called it an adventure because her mother needed her to. She was thinking about one phone call from a man who never knew her name. One afternoon. Everything that followed. She looked over at Hannah, who was looking out the window the way she always looked at things. Quietly. Carefully. As if reading something no one else could see. Catherine put her hand over her daughter's. Hannah looked at her. Catherine said she was proud of her. Hannah said she knew. They drove the rest of the way home in the silence that exists between a mother and a daughter who have run out of words, not because there is nothing left to say, but because what remains between them is larger than language, and neither of them is in a hurry to reduce it. 6 years earlier, a man had looked at a file. He did not know the name of the 9-year-old in the back seat of a 2009 Civic on a cold Atlanta night. He did not know there was a 9-year-old at all. He asked 2 questions, received 2 honest answers, and made 1 phone call. Then he moved on to the next thing on his desk. He did not know that the child inside that file was watching the world. Learning its shape. Filing away the name of a stranger who had done something good without being asked. Growing slowly into someone who would one day stand alone at 11 o'clock at night outside a hotel, turned away twice, with 22 minutes left, and decide that she was not finished yet. That is what 1 phone call became. There is a version of this story where the lesson is about a brave girl who did something extraordinary. That version is true. But it is not the whole truth. The whole truth is this. Kindness is not a small thing. It does not stay where you put it. It moves. It travels through years and across lives and arrives in places you will never witness and in forms you never imagined. And it arrives with the full weight of whatever it cost the person who first offered it. Gregory Holt made a phone call he had forgotten by the following week. He never knew what it became. He did not know that it became a woman who rebuilt her entire life from nothing and raised a daughter who understood, in her bones, what a debt of that size required. He knows now. The question this story leaves is not whether there are more Russell Greers in the world. There are. The question is whether there are more people willing to do the small, quiet, unwitnessed thing. The phone call. The file review. The extra minute nobody asked you to spend. The act that costs something and earns nothing visible and disappears into the ordinary movement of a day. Because those things do not end where you leave them. They go somewhere you cannot follow. And sometimes, years later, in a form you never predicted, they come back. If this story moved something in you, leave a comment. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me about a moment when someone did something for you that they did not have to do. Or a moment when you did something quietly for someone else and never found out what it became. Those stories matter. Leave them below. If you are not subscribed yet, do it now. Not for the numbers. Because there are more stories like this one and you should be here when they arrive. And if this one is worth sharing, share it. Some stories need to travel.